So happy to be here. I'm one of those probably traveled the farthest. Came to Sydney yesterday, arrived from Hong Kong, about 10 hours flight. For those of you who are interested in coming to Hong Kong, let me share you some more later, maybe during lunch. But thanks for Roger's introduction. So basically, let me just highlight a few background of mine, and then I'll go straight into my presentations, which I hope won't take too much, but I'm going to share a lot of stories about China. And I think the first ever thing, I enjoy all the presentations that I have so far, thanks Mark and Alistair and Ava. I think I also learned a lot being a Chinese who live in China. So I live in Beijing for about 7 years now. I lived in the US for 4 years, came from Hong Kong originally. So I wouldn't say I am the kind of the symbol for the new China, but I think I represent a very interesting crowd from China. So educated Westernly, and then live abroad, work in multinational companies, start up company now, and then we're doing some sort of relevance business in this world about digital media and also social media. So I think it's an interesting perspective that I will share today. So the big question becomes, how is digital and social media going to help marketers? So let me give a very, very simple example. I actually just finished my European trip with my family. So the trip itself is a great story about social media and how digital actually affected Chinese customers. So let me share a few things. A lot of people talk about WeChat, talk about Weibo. I'm going to highlight that in my presentation as well, but give you a very, very straight, good example from my family's travel in Central Europe. So at first, my wife and I were thinking about, okay, let's go to Europe for 2 weeks, and we have our agenda basically worked out, which are the countries and the stops that I want to go. I drove all the way from Budapest, and then flew all the way to Zurich, and then we flew to England and blah, blah, blah. We actually, at the last minute, because of a friend's recommendation on WeChat, that while you are in Austria, why don't you check out this place called Hallstatt? For those of you who knows this city, well, it's called a city, but it's really a village with about 725 citizens living in that village. It's prettiest. Obviously, the prettiest ever place that I've been to on Earth. And I call it the heaven on Earth. And so for those of you who haven't been to there, you should go there. So I know most of you are coming from different industries, and I was told by Roger that some of you come from the tourism industry. So think about the Chinese customers. Mark talked about that. We love to travel independently, and yes, so we did that. 4 of us. We booked all things by ourselves. We booked hotels. I took my car. I love my BMW that I rented in Germany, and went all the way through. So the 2 weeks of time, we basically did everything by ourselves. So that is just to get a great example to start with, and then I'm going to go through some other kind of cases. So hopefully I will touch on these 4 questions, and if not, please challenge me over lunchtime, and I can share more of you. So first of all, I think this is a big question that Roger tried to give to every one of us. As a speaker. So I think it's hard to tell, the Chinese consumers' psychology and how we make decisions. But, I try to share some of my point of view or Master's point of view. And the second part is, I would actually love to share more examples about, how other companies doing. So I think this is very Chinese, I think, in a way. A lot of Chinese customers and consumers, companies as well, they don't like to innovate in the beginning. They like to follow. What are the others doing? So I think this is a good way to see how other MNCs and how other Chinese companies do use social media to help their business. And the third way is kind of do's and don'ts. One of the examples I quoted actually is about McDonald's, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. I can talk about more examples. And then the last part is also per Roger's request, I added in a tourism example. Okay. So one of the multi-million-dollar questions or the predictions, how different are the Chinese consumers? Let's put it that way. A lot of people talk about social media today. So I did a little research online. So when you think of all the social media platforms, the major ones across the universe or the globe. So when you think of Facebook, yeah, they're big. And QQ, we talk a lot about WeChat. So by the way, WeChat and QQ are both owned by Tencent. As a matter of fact, Tencent, this company is crazy. They actually compete each other within the company. So QQ actually compete vigorously with WeChat. And they share very much similar fan base in the beginning. But then WeChat got off, with so many other people. I can talk about WeChat later. But, when you think of QQ and Tencent, they have overlaps. But you think about their users, QQ has over 800 million. I don't think anyone would think of a business of that scale here. And then when you think of other things like Sina Weibo, they are already over 500 million. WeChat, the latest figure that I saw, they're already at 400 million and growing very quickly. So think about that. I think Facebook, I used to work at Nielsen in the US, as Roger introduced. I think Facebook took 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, to grow to 500 million users. Think about how many years that WeChat actually took for 400 million. 2 years. In 2 years' time. They started literally in 2011. So WeChat is still keep growing very fastly, and I can talk about how WeChat and Weibo we should use in marketing. And then there's some other things that you have never heard of maybe. 人人, R-E-N means people, basically. And it is the knockoff, if you will. In the beginning, you will think of the Facebook. But then, 人人 did some other things. This is a lot of other speakers talk about, a lot of Chinese companies, they started off with, copying some existing features, but then innovate. So 人人 is another one. And someone asked about the future of predictions. I can give you some. I'm not the genius, but I read the newspaper on my plane, actually. So most of you know Alibaba, I think, or at least heard of Taobao, right? So same company. So Alibaba's chairman is Ma Yun. So he's like talking about this new platform that they're launching. Alibaba is launching this called Lai Wang. So latest social media platform. So he basically issued a verdict within the company, so that got leaked out, no surprise. He's asking every single employee of Alibaba in China to subscribe to add 100 fans to their own Lai Wang account, which is a new platform. Is going to compete with WeChat. So when you think of China, digital space, I would, I don't work for those companies. I'm not promoting them, but we always talk about BAT. You heard of it? B-A-T, BAT. It's not the animal or the insect. It's talking about the three companies. B stands for Baidu, right? The search engine. A stands for Alibaba. T stands for Tencent. So if I am the kind of with the prediction in front of me, I will always go with these three companies. Whatever they do, you look after them and check out what they're doing lately, and something gotta come from one of these. Okay. So when we talk about the social media landscape, we talk a lot about WeChat, we talk a lot about Weibo, but I'm here to share a few slides, maybe more about how people are using it, because of what Amasa does. We take a look at all the consumers. We call it social listening online, right? So when you think of WeChat and Weibo, I would, coming from a Chinese perspective, I would share with you very important difference for these two. WeChat is more like, as some of the speakers already touched on, they are more like peer-to-peer communication. So it's good for CRMs, I would say. For example, we talk about McDonald's, we talk about other things. So for credit card, for example, let me use one of my examples for my own. So I had China Merchants Bank, which is one of the most popular credit cards in China. And so every time I swipe my card, a message comes to my Weibo, come to my WeChat account, and I can actually instantaneously interact with this WeChat account, asking questions about, okay, what is my credit right now? And how much is it on US dollars? How much is it on RMB? So WeChat has been doing a lot of that. A lot of companies doing instant, real-time CRM. Versus Weibo, you don't do a lot of that. Weibo is more about news channels right now, more about companies promoting their products and just brand building. From my point of view, I would think that's the very important difference. They do share some similarities. And then when you think of why people use all these social media platforms, right? So I'm going to highlight a few. So SNS is like 人人 that I mentioned, the people one. Most people use SNS type of websites in China, basically to keep in touch with people. So it's like Facebook, what you would do. But I think the young people, they don't really like that too much. Because it's, yes, a lot of college students will still use 人人, but the problem is, it's not on your mobile, and 人人 try to do some mobile stuff as well, but they're more popular with games. So, and now, they kind of lost the business to Weibo and WeChat. So when we talk about Weibo and WeChat, so you ought to think of this, why people want to use them. So one of the perspective is, okay, think about the age and the generation gap. So let me quote another example. So my father-in-law, he never had and had never used Weibo, because he feel like Weibo is the new generation and everything. And Weibo does not have a voice function. And when you think of WeChat, very importantly, it has a voice function. You can even do live video chat. So looking at your family member. A lot of Chinese customers, they live abroad, and they actually use that to talk to their families. So my father-in-law subscribed to WeChat. My father-in-law, my mom, my mother-in-law, they actually used WeChat when we were traveling in Europe. They took every single pictures of every single place and put it up. So my mom took all the pictures of the restaurants. My dad took the beer that we had in Czech Republic, uploaded it, and immediately you will get like 20 responses, in a second. So, this is very important for WeChat. And one of the reasons why people like to talk about that, one of the speakers mentioned it, Chinese loves to talk about experience online, be it negative or positive. Probably they want to talk more about the negatives. But the other reason is because we all want to share. I mentioned about the Hofstadt example that I went to in Austria. So this is exactly the data telling us, 80% more, across different age groups, Chinese consumers trust their friends. So you gotta use, a lot of people talk about KOLs and other things. Yes, the KOL, the key opinion leaders are very important, but actually not as much as their friends. If 3 of their Chinese friends say, okay, let's buy this LV bag, the girl will buy it. Right? So this is very much a huge influence.